Hey everyone, Tankenstein here. In this video, I'll be reviewing the Sherman III. This is a currently ranked 3 battle rating 3.7 medium tank in the Swedish Crown Forces tech tree that costs 1300 golden eagles and comes with 10 backups. In this review, I'll be going over everything that you need to know about it, including its stats, how it plays, I'll go over its strengths and weaknesses, I'll give some scores in several key areas, and then I'll give my final recommendation and if I feel that this vehicle is worth purchasing or not. As always, please consider subscribing if you'd like more content like this, as I greatly appreciate it and it helps with the algorithm. But with that said, let's get into the review. Now to start, I'll place its stat card here on the side of the screen. Things to note are its turret traverse, reload rate, and its power to weight ratio. Now for how it plays. Put simply, the Sherman III plays basically identically to any other Sherman at and around its BR, except with slightly better mobility. This vehicle, along with the T-34, are known as the granddaddies of main battle tanks for a reason, as they do pretty much everything well. The Sherman does trade some survivability and a touch of mobility for enhanced armament, but it can still do both things very well. You can frontline with the III, especially in down tiers, but you can also flank with it due to its surprisingly good engine, and you can also cap bases and even brawl, with the latter of those being more of an option in down tiers. This vehicle does lack the APCR present on higher BR Shermans, so you should be mindful of weak spots on enemy tanks and not just blindly fire, as the M3 cannon is good, but it isn't a miracle worker. Further, the armor, while decent at its own BR, will suffer in up tiers and will be easily penned when fighting things like the long gun Panzer IV, especially if you're not angling, which is something you should be doing all the time. But these concerns aside, the Sherman III is just a very good mix of the things that you need to perform in pretty much any role that you might want. Well, any role outside of sniping, because honestly, this gun isn't that great at long ranges. But with that being said, let's get into its strengths and weaknesses. And first, for its strengths. It lacks a hull-mounted MG port, which is normally a huge weak spot on the front of any Sherman. Second, it has a stabilizer that works up to around 22 kilometers per hour. Third, this features an excellent reload rate that can get down to 5 seconds if you have an ace crew. Fourth, it has a very effective 75mm cannon with a great M61 APC-BC shell that has HE filler on the inside. For its fifth strength, it has an excellent turret traverse of up to 24 degrees per second depending on crew skill. For its sixth strength, it features good mobility at this BR with a 15.4 horsepower per ton power to weight ratio. Beyond this, it has 5 crew members, resulting in enhanced survivability. And finally, this features premium RP and SL bonuses. Now for its weaknesses. First, it lacks a top-mounted HMG, which is fairly common on the other Shermans and means that you will not be able to attack aircraft nearly as easily or even use it as a weapon against lightly armored vehicles. Second, this lacks APCR shells, which may make engaging heavy tanks on occasion a little bit difficult. Third, this is a large and tall target, which makes this a fairly easy vehicle to hit, and depending on what's actually hitting you, a fairly easy vehicle to kill. And fourth, while not terrible, the armor is decent at its BR, but quickly loses effectiveness in up tiers. Now with that being said, let's get into how I score this vehicle. First, for armament, I give this a 7.5 out of 10. Maybe I'm crazy here, but the 75mm M3 cannon is great at this BR. While it lacks APCR, you shouldn't need it to pen most tanks from most angles. The M61 shell has excellent armor pen for this BR at 104mm at max, and has over 60 grams of explosive filler to destroy the interior of the tank that it pens. Further, the III has a stabilizer, a great turret traverse rate, and an excellent reload rate, which all combine to make the Sherman a surprisingly good vehicle at this BR in terms of armament, even though it does lack, of course, the top-mounted HMG that is typical of most Shermans. Now for mobility, I give this a 6.25 out of 10. The mobility on the III is actually pretty decent. It has a better than average power to weight ratio at about 15.4 horsepower per ton, which helps it to get to its top speed fairly quickly. Unfortunately, this Sherman variant has an outdated suspension and not the improved HVSS, meaning that it isn't as good off-road as one might hope. Further, the III has a meager 5.4 km per hour reverse speed, which is subpar at this BR. All things considered though, the Sherman III's mobility is on the good side of average, average, or conversely on the low end of being pretty good. Now for survivability, I give it a 5.75 out of 10. While it doesn't have great armor, the Sherman can still deflect a fair amount of shells, especially when angling. It will be penned fairly easily by most enemies, especially from the side and when in up tiers, but it still compares decently to other tanks at and around its BR. Despite the fact that the Sherman III lacks the additional armor plating on the side of the hull that most other Shermans have, the III lacks an MG port in the hull, which is great, as that typically is a huge weak spot. Further, having a 5-man crew is definitely a big strength, as it will allow you to survive pens better than many other tanks, especially being that the interior of the hull is relatively spacious. So while it doesn't have fantastic armor, it definitely has some other features that allows it to survive decently well. Now overall, I give this a 6.75 out of 10. The Sherman III is a surprisingly good vehicle, despite the fact that it is a Sherman, which pretty much everyone everywhere should be familiar with by now. In fact, due to the blend of features, such as having somewhat thick frontal armor compared to similar BR Shermans, as well as a better engine, I might go so far as to say that this is one of the best low BR Shermans in War Thunder. Part of me even wants to give it a 7 out of 10, which is a great score. This may be basic, but this is also a great vehicle. In fact, you might even want to be able to put up some of the other scores a touch higher than I gave them. But either way, do you recommend the Sherman III? If you couldn't guess by now, yes, I do. Not only is this vehicle rank 3, which gives it access to completing events and tasks, but it also costs a comparatively low amount at only 1,300 Golden Eagles, or around $8 USD. Because of this, it immediately becomes a steal and a must-buy whenever a sale comes around, or if it's in the Warbond shop. It can fairly easily kill most or all enemies that it comes across with its very good armament, and can even move fairly quickly and survive a few hits. Like I said, the scores I gave may even be underrating this vehicle by a tiny bit. The Sherman III can easily become a workhorse tank, and can even help to form currently War Thunder's only lineup that can have the T-34, Panzer IV, and the Sherman, which in my opinion is awesome historically based, and I personally have it set up. I mean, heck, even though this is a relatively low BR vehicle, and thus because it is lower BR will have lower SL and RP multipliers, this is still a great SL grinder because of how good it is. But with that said, yes, this is a must-buy tank, possibly even more so than the German T-34, which I also have a review on, due to the relatively low price of the III. So because of all of this and more, the III receives my Tankenstein seal of approval and my full recommendation. This is a great tank. But with that said, thank you all so much for watching. If you don't mind, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing, as those all mean the world to me and helps my channel to grow. But either way, thanks again, and I'll see you all on the other side. Take care, everyone.